Hey guys, Mike from Magnanimous here, back live from Studio One for another build of the day. If you guys are new to this series, we're doing this every Monday through Friday. This week we're going live at 5 p.m. every day, and we're going to be highlighting a different camera build every day, where we'll pull multiple pieces from our inventory, put it all together, and talk about how it all works together and why we're putting it together the way we are. If you guys have questions while I'm going through this, please comment below, and we'll have a Q&A section at the end where we'll try and answer all those. If you guys have any gear you want to see while we're doing this, comment below as well, and we'll highlight that gear in future videos. Today's build was actually a request from a few days ago. We're going to be taking a look at the Canon C200 and rigging it out for a shoulder rig build. Today we're actually going to do two separate builds with it. We'll do a ENG style shoulder rig build, and then we'll do a cinema shoulder rig build. Let's dive into the gear and we'll talk about all the pieces that we're using today. To start, we have the C200. As we said, that'll be the camera that we're pulling from today. And we talked about its big brother, the C500, yesterday, but the C200 sits just below it. It'll be an awesome entry-level professional camera that'll give you 8-bit 420 recording internal and 4K up to 60 frames a second. But it also has a second encoder for Canon's Cinema Raw Light. So you could put a CFast card in here and shoot raw light in 4K 60 frames a second in 10-bit or 4K 24 or 30 in 12-bit. So it gives you a lot of options. You can save some data rates, do the 8-bit recording, and get really long record times. Or if you're looking for the utmost quality, you can shoot in that Cinema Raw Light and get the most out of the camera that way. Has a native EF mount on the front, and then is not quite as modular as the C500 Mark II, but is still very easily kitted out for a lot of different setups. We have a side grip on the side. It also runs off a standard ARRI rosette, so you're able to remove that and put it like an extension or something like that if you need to move that hand grip around. This is, I would say, kind of the successor to the C100 Mark II, if you guys are familiar with that at all, which it has improvements over that. You'll notice the body is shorter here, so we sit much lower. That allows us to have an easier time for gimbal applications or anywhere where we need a shorter camera to fit. And then most notably, our XLR ports have been moved to the side here, which means we don't have to run the top handle just to have XLR ports. If you're used to the C100, those sit right up here, and you have to use that if you want those ports. So we could remove this if we needed to minimize that camera and keep everything nice and compact. The camera features internal NDs, which is really useful for today's build because we can get away without a matte box at all, so we don't have to have that in front to manage our NDs. And I've been pleasantly impressed by this camera's autofocus. It features a dual Digic 6 processor inside, so it's rapid fast for autofocus, and I found that it's really reliable. It's not like your old school ratchety autofocus where you can see it like hunting back and forth trying to find it. It's very smooth and almost mimics a professional pulling focus, and it just kind of slowly finds its way in. It's been very, very reliable. For low light, it's also pleasantly robust. I've found that for documentary work, it's clean up to about 6400 with acceptable noise, but you can go lower that down, I'd say about 3200 for cinema quality. That'll guarantee that you're not getting any noise in your shadows and things like that. Really fantastic camera. Small and lightweight, so it's not going to be too heavy for what we're doing today. And yeah, very, very versatile. The lens we're going to be using for our ENG build is this guy right here. This is the Canon Compact Servo 18-80 C&E. And it is a phenomenal lens for ENG and broadcast work. It aims to be a hybrid lens, kind of sitting in between their cinema line, which is the C&Es, and their L series, that are their photo series of lenses. You'll notice it's geared for follow focuses. It also has a built-in servo motor right here on the side, and we have a wide and telephoto button there so we can control our servo motor. And that servo motor powers through the native EF mount here on the back, which means we don't need any extra battery to power this lens. It's going to pull its power straight from that EF mount. And that makes it extremely versatile. It's parfocal, has autofocus, auto iris, and supports built-in optical image stabilization. So it's awesome for ENG handheld stuff like we're going to do today, because it can help work out some of those bumps and bruises as we're walking around and things like that. It'll help stabilize that right internal with our optical stabilization. And yeah, it gives that full nice wide 18 to 80 zoom range, so we can have some real nice wides but get some close-ups as well. And yeah, the only thing to be aware of is that it is a T4.4, so if you're going to be doing low light concert stuff, just be aware you may need to either pop your ISO up or pair it with a camera that's going to have better low light performance. But still very, very usable even in a low light scenario, but awesome for any daytime walking around stuff for sure. We are going to throw on this little side grip here. This is an ENG style side grip that's going to attach on the side so that I can use my rocker here to control my servo motor. So I'll set that up as we're doing our build, and we'll attach that to the side. And then because we're doing an ENG build, I'm going to run a EVF. Now, our EVF on the C200 is in the back, and I can't really move that. So I'm going to use the Small HD 502 monitor here, and I'm going to pair it with what's called the Side Finder. The Side Finder is a really cool attachment that all I'm going to do is pop this guy in like so. And it snaps in like that. And now I can look through my EVF and I'll see my monitor. But if I don't want to use the EVF, I can just push down on these clips on each side, and my monitor folds out just like that so I can view a normal monitor. So it's easy to switch between the two. So for our purposes on our ENG build, I can very quickly move between both. And yeah, I've talked about the UI of these monitors before, but it functions on a page system, which is phenomenal for really quick, fast movements between settings. For me, I used to always have a setup where I would do a clean output. The next page would have 239 crop lines with a basic B2709 LUT applied to it with whatever log recording that I was sending to the monitor. The next page after that would have focus peaking on it for critical focus pulls, and the page after that would be an entire histogram for exposure control. And I could very quickly just swap between any of those with just the swipe of my finger with the little joystick here. And so it's very easy to switch between whatever setup you're needing. The SD card slot on the top allows you to preset all of your user settings. So you could load different setups with different pages, your own LUTs, things like that, all right into the monitor, and then you can just pull that out, switch it to another Small HD, and that UI carries between all the systems, so it's very easy to rotate between them. Awesome monitor, one of my favorites that we carry. And then we'll be throwing that up on the shoulder rig using a RE CSP1 shoulder pad. I do really, really love this shoulder pad. It's my favorite that we have in our inventory because you'll notice the rod clamp here is a rod clamp on one side, but it's a hook on the other, which means I only really need to drop in one side at a time, and then it'll lock in there, which makes swaps between tripod and shoulder very, very quickly. I had some short films that I was shooting about 3 years ago that called for different shots on tripod and shoulder throughout the whole day, and I was often just swapping between them. So my AC just had this in his pocket on the camera bag that he had, and I would just pull off tripod, I'd go shoulder pad, he'd pop it on there, lock it down with one twist, and in about 30 seconds I was ready to go for shoulder rig. Super awesome, very easy to rotate between builds, and then it's very adjustable because I can move my rod clamp independently from the shoulder pad, and then I can move the whole shoulder pad along my rails to really get its position exactly where I want to. And that's going to come in handy for today's build as well, because we'll build up mostly on the tripod, and we'll need to be able to slide our shoulder pad up underneath the camera after we get off. So I'll be able to mount this and then just slide it very easily. And then we have a hand grip set that will run for the cinema side. I hadn't talked about it, but let's go ahead and mention our lens that we're running for our cinema build today. We'll switch from the 18 to 80 to the C&E 35mm here. These lenses are awesome for all sorts of purposes, but they're my favorite for doc and interview work. They render extremely rich skin tones, and they tend to be a little bit warmer in the color spectrum, so you can get really nice rich colors in those skin tones, which makes them great for interviews. We'll be using the 35mm T1.5 today, so we'll have a nice, really fast stop there so that we can get some good depth of field, and we'll run our follow focus up there for focus control. That's about all the detailed stuff, so let's go ahead and start putting everything together. To start, we'll go ahead and kick over to our cart here to get our base plates set up. There's a lot of stuff for today, so I know it's a bit of height from our lens mount to our rods, which will allow our follow focus and things like that to fit properly. So we're going to go ahead and just pop this guy on. And then we'll attach the ARRI adapter base to the riser block. Then the ARRI adapter plate for Canon cinema cameras is a little unique in that it has a separate bottom plate that our tripod plate will attach to. And finally, we can go ahead and mount our tripod plate. Our Eng setup, I'm going to choose not to run the camera's onboard monitor because I want to minimize our shoulder setup. So I'm going to route our camera menu out to the 502 so I can view all of that while I'm operating. Because of that, I'm going to remove my shock mount here for the shock. And we can set our monitor down. And then this is going to mount just to the side of our camera right here. But for our purposes, for our first build, we'll keep that off. All right, with our shock mount secured, we can go ahead and pop this on our tripod and finish out the rest of our build over here. We'll use two 12-inch 15mm rods, and for this first part of the build, I'm actually going to run these mostly out the back. The 18 to 80 is light enough that you don't need lens support for it. So we're mostly just going to be using the rods to hold a battery pack on the back and then to hold our shoulder pad. I'm going to go ahead and rough fit our shoulder pad here. And I'm going to purposely mount it in a way that I can still remove my tripod plate here, but I can also still mount our brick battery on the back. So I'm just going to kind of test, make sure I have a good distance there, because the goal is to come off the tripod and go to shoulder as quick as we can. So once we're finished with this, I'll lift up and just slide our shoulder pad forward to get the proper placement there. Then we have a gold mount battery bracket here. This is going to hold a larger brick battery on the back because when we're doing ENG work, we don't want to have to worry about battery life and things like that. We want to have as much uptime as we can. So I'm going to go and run that off the back. You can adjust this in a multitude of ways. Sometimes we'll run it horizontal, which keeps the weight distributed differently, or we could run this in the underside if we wanted it more of a counterbalance there. I like to be able to set my rig down on a countertop very easily, so I'm going to run it vertical like this so that our shoulder pad's the only thing sitting on the bottom underneath, and it can still stabilize pretty easily if I were to need to set this down or to hand it to somebody else. Now let's go ahead and get our lens attached and set up. With the 18 to 80 attached, we can go ahead and mount our ENG side grip. This is also an RE rosette, so you can be very freeform about the hand grips. I'm going to choose to run both of the hand grips today, but if I wanted, I could remove the C200's hand grip, replace it with the ENG, or vice versa. I could put the C200's hand grip up here if I wanted to only use that. I like having both as an option because the C200's has the joystick on it, so I can do menu controls, and the ENG has the zoom rocker for zoom control. So I'm just going to run this in here. There is also a record start stop button on the ENG grip, but you do just want to make sure that you have the settings set inside the camera to accept external record, and it will send that record signal through the EF mount for you. Then we just have a small cable here that's going to plug into the remote port in the bottom of our lens, and that's going to send that signal for us. Great. Now let's get our Evf set up. For that, I'm going to start with an articulating arm, and that's just going to mount in my front here. And then we have our EVF. Now I'm going to purposely mount my EVF on the side here, similar to a setup we talked about before, but I'm going to countersink my washer. That's going to allow me to maintain tilt movement of the EVF without having to adjust my articulating arm. So once I get it in position, I can still adjust that if I were to have a second operator take over, or if I just were to shift the position on my shoulder a little bit. Back out half a turn, countersink that washer, and we'll make sure our other end is tightened in there. There we go. And then I'm just going to rough approximate where I think my EVF will end up. Somewhere right about there feels good. And that's going to allow me then to still do that tilt movement that we talked about. So I still have some adjustment that I can do with the EVF there. Let's get him just a little bit higher. There we go. Great. Now I'm going to do a special setup with both my camera and my monitor here. You'll notice I already have a small battery in the back of my camera. That's so that I can have a hot swappable brick battery in the back here. Both of the systems are going to automatically default to DC power, which in this case is all going to be routing from our battery plate on the back here. But with mounting an onboard battery, that means that if the DC power cuts out, i.e. I take a battery off, all my systems will stay running off of their onboard battery, and then I can just replace that larger brick battery. That way I don't have to worry about my systems ever shutting off. Any sort of live event, things like that that you're doing, anytime that your camera's off, you're not shooting anything, and if something happens, you're going to miss it. So you want to make sure that your camera stays on as much as possible. And so this will keep us running throughout the whole day. So because we're running two devices off of our battery plate back here, I only have one P-tap port. This is called a multi-tap. It's going to plug into my one P-tap that I have here, and it gives me 4 outputs there. I have a P-tap cable for my camera and for my monitor. This is just a 4-pin LEMO. I'll run it into the DC in port right here on our camera. And then, let me drape that for now. I've said it in other videos, but I like to wrap my cables around something just to help control and manage the cables. In this case, I'm going to wrap around my 15 mil rods here. It'll stay out of the way, but gets rid of that kind of excess cable so I don't have a bunch of cable hanging loose around my camera. Because then if I'm moving things like that, it could get caught on something, and we don't want that. Then we'll run our P-tap. This goes into a 2-pin LEMO on the dummy battery that I have here. And then I'm going to run this up and loop it around my articulating arm. You do want to keep in mind that if I'm going to swing this monitor out, I'm going to need a little bit of excess cable here to accommodate that. So just think of how you're going to be using it. Make sure you have slack in the right areas so you don't accidentally run out of cable or pull something too much. But with this, now I can swing my monitor out. Whoop, looks like we got a little loose there. Let me tighten that up. And then I can swing it back when I need that EVF. I'm just going to take a small twist tie, and I'm going to tie my cable in the loop up here to keep it from moving around. There we are. And then we just need a single SDI cable to run from our camera's output into our input here. Twist tie our cables together, manage all that slack. And then any good ENG build is going to need audio. We're using the Senken CS1 shotgun mic. This guy's awesome because it's extremely short and compact, which means you're not going to have a bunch of lengthy mic sticking out in the front, but it's still going to give you a really awesome pickup. So we'll run this into, let me turn so you guys can see. We'll run that into our shock mount up here. And then just run a XLR cable down to our input 1 here. And then we'll make sure that's set to plus 48V or phantom power because our Senken does not have an internal battery on it. So we'll want to be sending it power so that it is able to power up. And then lastly, we just need to pop on our Anton Bauer 90 watt-hour brick battery to power all of our accessories. And that is our ENG rig. Why don't we go ahead and pop this off, and I'll show you guys this up on my shoulder. So once I pop it off, I'm just going to loosen the rod clamp here and slide my shoulder pad forward. Because my battery plate's not sticking down in the bottom, I can easily set it up like it's a countertop here. And then because it's still sticking back a little bit too much, I'm going to adjust the other method of it, and I'm just going to slide it so it gets underneath my base plate there. And then I can easily pop this up on my shoulder, and there we are. Go ahead and power this guy on. There is our full ENG rig. I can manually pull my focus if I need to, or I have a push button right on the top for one-shot autofocus, so I can utilize that powerful dual-digit 6 processor. And yeah, everything's nice, lightweight on my back. I can have someone quickly come out, detach that battery, replace it with a new one, so I never have to turn anything off. And yeah, simple, lightweight, to the point. Now let's go ahead and re-rig this out for our cinema setup. I'm going to slide my shoulder pad back again. And pop this up on my tripod. Nothing in the base plate is changing for this. Really what we're going to do is swap our monitor out for a larger 7-inch onboard. And then I'm going to run the top monitor here as a setting adjustment monitor, as well as a potential AC or client monitor if they want to come behind and see. And then we'll switch our lens out to that CNE35. I'm going to leave my mic on because you do still need scratch audio. If I was doing a cinema setup, I'm probably going to hire a professional sound recordist to run a mixer and some higher end mics for me, but we still want some scratch track so that I'm able to sync all of that in post easily. Power these guys off, pop off the dummy battery. We'll keep that here because we're going to use that same dummy battery with our 702 monitor. And I'm just going to remove this. And replace him with our 702 here. The 702 is basically the exact same thing as the 502, just 7 inches instead of 5. Uses the same UI, has an SD card slot in the exact same position, so you really can be just as flexible with it. You can use the same SD card. So if we had settings on the last monitor that we wanted to move over to this one, we would just need to pop in a new card slot or a new SD card, pull up that preset, and we'd be good to go. Arm this guy over for me. Well, actually, let's go ahead and leave him out of the way for now. Let's get our lens swapped out. You do need to make sure you remove this ENG plug down here. And then we'll need to remove the side grip because it's going to run into our rods as we go to twist off our lens. Cameras with locking EF mounts are a little bit more versatile because we can just loosen here and our lens pulls straight off. But because the C200 uses the twist lock, we do have to keep in mind the extra bits on the right side of our camera. All right, I do want to slide my rods forward a little bit because I'm going to want to run a follow focus and I need just a little bit more rod length in the front there. So I'm just going to slide those forward a bit. And then we have a bridge plate here, which is going to give us 2 rosettes on each side for our hand grips. And ARRI hand grips. We've shown these in other videos, but it's just a simple ARRI hand grip that runs off a rosette and then a hand grip extender to give us a good amount of length off of our hand grip there. So we'll attach one of these on each side. Our R2 hand grips then. And lastly, we have our ARRI MF2 follow focus. I feel like we've talked about this a lot in the last few days, but in case you've missed anything, this is my favorite manual follow focus that we carry because it's extremely versatile and adaptable. Every spot on the follow focus can be adapted, so I've already preemptively moved my gear from the front to the back here, and then I've moved my thumb knob here to the front as well because it's the easiest for this setup. But if we were doing a different setup, I could rearrange all of those based on the side of the lens I'm going to and where I need that to sit. Looks like we need just a little bit more length on our rods, so I'm just going to move those guys forward. There we are. And then we can move our follow focus to match up to our lens. Great. Let's get our 702 into position. And I mentioned it in a previous video, but shoulder rigs are very, very subjective. You guys will likely have a portion of this that you might disagree with or might say is better done in a different way. And you're probably not wrong. For your shooting style, that might be how you prefer it. Everyone's going to be different, so you guys should really take a look at how you plan on using the shoulder rig and picking a setup that's going to be best suited for your production. You may want a shorter hand grip on one side. You may want a different monitor. Perhaps you really, really like ENG style viewfinders, so we could use that 502 over here so that you keep that EVF style. It's all up to what you're doing and what you need for your shoot. Go ahead and power everything back up. And we can pop this guy off of our tripod. Same thing, I'm just going to move my shoulder pad up so it sits underneath the camera. And then we're good to go ahead and throw this guy up on my shoulder. And then I've set up my follow focus so I can still do adjustment right here on the side. And then I have that nice 7-inch monitor right in front of my face so I can very easily see my critical focus. I could run focus peaking, something like that to help me. And this is just going to give you a very, very stable shoulder rig for whatever cinema needs that you guys may have. This is, very adaptable. You can build it out different ways. If you want to add a focus whip, something like that, you can do plenty with it. But this is the basic shoulder rig build that I have for cinema setups. Let's take a look, see if you guys had any questions. No questions today. If anything comes up that you guys are curious about, comment below. We can answer those down the line or in a future video. If you guys want to check this camera out, go to magrents.com. If you guys need help with streaming in any way, we're live streaming today from Studio One, and our partners over at perfectcircle.pro can hook you up with gear and a person to show up on site to help you with your stream, to set everything up, take all the hassle off of your shoulders so you can focus on the talent side of it, make sure the stream runs smooth, and we'll handle all the gear for you. If you guys want to see a camera in the future, comment below, let me know, and we can feature that in a future build. I think tomorrow we're going to be taking a look at the Alexa Mini with a super telephoto 200 to 400 zoom. So it should be a really, really fun one. So I'll plan to see you guys tomorrow for that. If you have questions or anything, visit us at Magrents or just give us a call. Take care.